This week, the SNP did something very out of character. It admitted that trans women are not women. Convicted rapist Adam Graham, who now goes by the name of Isla Bryson, was being housed in Corton Vale, a women's prison, while a risk assessment process was underway. Then, all of a sudden, First Minister Nicola Sturgeon decided it would be inappropriate for a male rapist to be in a women's facility. Why? Not because it was an obviously insane policy, but because there was a public outcry. And now the Scottish Prison Service has announced a review of transgender prisoners and how they are currently accommodated. It's a small step towards sanity. Most of you will have seen that while Sturgeon was pushing through her gender recognition reform bill, in spite of the fact that 2/3 of Scottish voters opposed it, she continually accused women who raised concerns of being bigots. Sturgeon explicitly said there was no merit to the opposing arguments. How dare women want to have their own spaces, rape crisis centres and prison facilities? We were repeatedly told that the very idea that a predatory man would lie about his identity to gain admission to vulnerable women was a transphobic dog whistle, that it simply never happens. And we heard the same in Westminster, when Tory MP Miriam Cates raised concerns about the Scottish bill because predatory men might exploit self-identification. Labour MP Lloyd Russell Moyle said, "That speech was probably one of the worst transphobic dog whistle speeches that I've heard in an awful long time." Labour MP Rosie Duffield had also been heckled by colleagues who apparently weren't interested in the fact that the overwhelming majority of violent crimes against women are committed by men, and that women-only spaces are therefore a necessary safeguarding measure. No, Russell Moyle, like Nicola Sturgeon, believes that anyone who raises these concerns is doing so because they hate trans people, that they are attempting to smear all trans people as predatory. But no one has done that. No one has even come close to doing that. Russell Moyle and Sturgeon are arguing with figments of their imagination. And Sturgeon doubled down this week. She said that those who were against self-ID are, quote, misogynist, homophobic, possibly racist, because why not? I'm surprised she didn't throw in anti-Semitic and fat-phobic just for the hell of it. That's the level of debate these days. Just assume the worst possible motives of your opponents and assert them as though they were true. And it now transpires that another male prisoner, Andrew Burns, now known as Tiffany Scott, a man described as, quote, one of the most menacing people inside the Scottish penal system, has also been moved to a female prison. This is an individual who has assaulted prison staff and has been known to bite open his own veins to spray blood at people. And an article in today's Daily Record reports how Amanda Benson, who was housed in a female prison with trans prisoners, felt compelled to have a contraceptive coil fitted because she feared being raped and becoming pregnant. She said, "My whole time in prison was on constant high alert. My nerves were frazzled with fear. These incredibly violent men were walking around the communal shower area naked and sometimes clearly aroused. Myself and other women were in cubicles with only a curtain to protect us." And last week it was reported that serial rapist Jonathan Mallon, a man who targeted women in toilets and changing rooms, is now calling himself Charlene and boasting to his fellow inmates that he will be moved to a women's prison by Easter. So why is it that this thing that never happens keeps on happening? Well, the answer is simple. It's because if you introduce self-ID laws where any man can claim to be a woman and is taken seriously, that will obviously be exploited by dangerous predators. Research by the British Journal of Criminology suggested that men who change their gender to female in jail often switch back to their birth sex after release. But how can that be if self-ID is a flawless system? And let me reiterate for the hard of thinking, I am not suggesting that trans people are inherently predatory. In fact, no one is suggesting this. We're talking about men exploiting a system. The SNP and other identitarian activist groups claim there is no evidence for this. OK, well, let's look at the figures. So according to the census data just released, 1 in every 250,000 women are convicted sex offenders. 1 in roughly every 2,500 men are convicted sex offenders. And 1 in every 585 trans women are convicted sex offenders. So what's going on here? Are trans women 5 times more likely to be sex offenders than other men? Or is it that men are exploiting the self-ID system? That those who are not trans, who have no feelings of gender dysphoria, are claiming to be women to gain access to female prisons? It has to be one or the other. Which is it? If you're denying that self-ID is open to exploitation, then you are effectively claiming that trans people are more likely to be predators, which strikes me as rather transphobic. In truth, it shouldn't matter whether a prisoner is genuinely trans or lying about being trans. Prisons, like rape crisis centres and domestic violence refuge centres, must operate on the basis of biological sex, because gender dysphoria doesn't change your sex. No human being has ever changed sex. And while trans prisoners can be more vulnerable, that's an argument for stronger protection in men's prisons, not a free-for-all when it comes to female facilities. And even Nicola Sturgeon knows this. The case of Adam Graham, aka Isla Bryson, proves it. If Sturgeon really does believe that trans women are women, then she's just gone and put a woman in a man's prison. But of course she knows, as we all know, that trans women are not women, otherwise they wouldn't be trans. So not only is Sturgeon not being honest, not only is she seemingly happy to put some of the most vulnerable women in society in danger to satisfy her ideological objectives, not only is she ignoring the views of the majority of Scottish voters, she's going to call anyone who disagrees with her a hateful bigot, a transphobe, and even possibly a racist. Such infantile behaviour has no place in Parliament. The electorate deserves a whole lot better.